Man, this is so good. Over a year after its original release, Stellar Blade drops onto PC and within a matter of days sells over 1 million units, still selling right now. And media outlets aren't really too sure what to think about it. You got a few of them that are fumbling around trying to pretend like they've liked it all along, a couple other ones that are trying to shame you for enjoying it, and then of course you got a couple of others that are saying that the game is only popular because of Asians, because they don't count or something. Why are you guys like this? The truth is, Stellar Blade was never the right kind of game in their eyes. It wasn't made for the right reasons or how they want games to be made or what they want games to do. And that's a problem because when the media doesn't like who the game is made for, well, then they got to find any way to be able to diminish its success through subtext or whatever means that they can use. But this game is much more important than a lot of people give it credit for because it's exposed a double standard. It pushed Sony to get rid of region locking, delivered one of the cleanest PC ports that we have seen in years, and it sparks a discussion that goes far beyond thick thighs and camera angles. I've played Stellar Blade. I really enjoy it. And while I've been playing it, it's not perfect. It really shows just how hard people have tried to misrepresent it. And that's incredibly frustrating. So today what I want to do is I want to break down the game itself. I want to talk about the backlash that it faced and what this really says about the industry. Because it's not that Stellar Blade did anything wrong. It didn't break any rules. It just exposed the truth. Stellar Blade was always a bit of a curiosity. Even before its launch, it had this slick-looking high-end visuals, stylish combat, and eye-catching protagonist, and it stood out as a rare console release, AAA console release from Shift Up, the Korean studio behind Goddess of Victory Nikke, a wildly successful gacha game. And this is something that we've been seeing more of lately, more studios that are making a fortune off of mobile or gacha games that are using that money to fund real full-scale releases, not another monetization funnel, actual games. Cygames did it recently with Granblue Fantasy Relink, which then sold over 1 million copies in under 2 weeks. Stellar Blade then followed, hitting 1 million units that were sold in just a month after the game's launch, while it was still exclusive to PlayStation 5. But then came the PC version. A year after the release, Stellar Blade dropped on Steam and it immediately became one of the top sellers. It broke over 90,000 concurrent players in a matter of hours and then passed 180,000 players at peak hours, then climbing up towards 200,000 by the end of the week. Sony later confirmed that it was the fastest selling PlayStation title in Steam history, moving 19 times faster than any of their other ports. That one release more than tripled its lifetime sales, pushing it towards 3 million copies sold, and it's still rising. Now, I'm going to be completely transparent with you guys. I did not see that coming, and that is partly on me because I read a lot of reviews, not because I necessarily trust all of them, but because I just want to get a temperature check. Is the game fun? Does it run well? What's the combat like? But with Stellar Blade, even though most outlets gave it a solid review score, it was an 80 on OpenCritic at the time, I didn't realize just how much of that coverage was drenched in subtext. The reviews weren't about how the game played, they framed it as a knockoff, a Diet Nier Automata, a game that you should feel embarrassed to enjoy. Not because it actually deserved that, but because that's how they wanted it to be seen. I'd only realized what was happening after two things. One, I actually played the game, which we'll go into later, and two, Shift Up quietly did something incredible and nobody gave them credit for it. Now, you guys might have missed this because a lot of people did, but Shift Up actually approached Sony to lift the region locks that had blocked Helldivers 2, Stellar Blade, and a bunch of other games from being sold in over 180 countries. Now, this was not a soft ask. It ended up leading to a full policy reversal, one of the biggest moves that Sony has made in years, and what happened? Silence. IGN covered the ongoing discussions that they had originally had, but once it actually went through, no follow-up, no articles, no credit, not to Stellar Blade, not to Shift Up, and this is one game. This one game helped make PlayStation games globally available again. Apparently, that wasn't worth reporting on. And the minute that happened, it brought everything back into focus, how targeted this game has been since the very beginning. I mean, before its launch, IGN France had published an article, a hit piece more than anything else, calling Eve a doll that was made by somebody that's never seen a woman. Later, they would end up having to walk that back because turns out the director of the game is married, his wife is an artist that works at Shift Up, and Eve was modeled after a real Korean actress. Then after that came articles like how Stellar Blade became 2024's most controversial game. I thought that was Black Myth Wukong or a couple of other games now that I think about it. Stellar Blade's design isn't the problem, it's how creepy men are being about it. Stellar Blade reignites Gamergate discourse, and of course, the reviews, oh my lord, some of them knocking 30 to 40 points off of the score, not for bugs or broken mechanics, but because Eve was too hot. And now here we are again, same game, same outrage. Vice drops an article, Stellar Blade breaks Steam sales thanks to its thirsty fan base. PC Gamer throws out Gooner Game of the Year, pointing out 41% of the mods are smut. This message is not subtle. If you like this game, you're a creep. That's what they're trying to tell you. I mean, even Paul Tossi of Forbes chimed in, tweeting out that the game's success was mostly because of Asians. Like, that somehow makes it less legitimate, as if Korea, Japan, and China don't count. They said the exact same thing about Black Myth Wukong. It's not really popular, it's just big in China. Oh, okay, Chinese players aren't real. Is that the argument now? Now, I think this is really important to point out because of how insidious all of this is, but what this framing really does, subtly but intentionally, is tell you, the Western reader, that you don't have to care, that this game's success is distant, foreign, and not your win. That's the most important part, that it's really not that popular because it's not popular here. All it is culture war nonsense that is dressed up as consumer analysis. And that's when it hit me. This is the exact same thing that happened to Wukong. I was reading PC Gamer's Stellar Blade review, and two things jumped out at me immediately. Two red flags that made it very clear that this game wasn't being judged on what it was being judged for who it was made for. In Molly Taylor's review, she wrote, Stellar Blade's opening hours are so mired by atrocious level design that I can only assume that players are willing to plow through for the sake of seeing the protagonist Eve's bum jiggle around in a skin-tight suit for just a bit longer. Do I blame them? Not necessarily, but it's a mighty tough beginning to get through before things start getting good. And they do, eventually. Though even after 30 hours, I still couldn't shake the feeling that it was trying a little too hard to be Nier Automata on horny steroids. Isn't that essentially just Viagra? After all, its running plot is almost identical. The end of the Earth as we know it, now populated by monstrous alien life forms, a scantily clad woman fighting to reclaim the planet and save humanity alongside a drone companion, soundtracked by eerie female vocals that almost stand parallel to the horrors of the world. Now listen, I've been in these trenches before. I've been playing Shift Up's other title, Nikke, Goddess of Victory, since 2023. I am not new to this developer's particular brand of goonery. If you are new to it, however, Stellar Blade's ass shots, jiggle physics, and barely there outfits are out the wazoo. Does the world or its characters ever acknowledge that fact? Bar one backstreet merchant, no, it's a bizarre juxtaposition in a game that so heavily sexualizes the undeniably glamorous Eve despite being a wholly sexless personality existing in a sexless universe. In fact, Eve has very little personality at all. The same can be said for the supporting cast, Adam and Lily, who, despite me wanting to know more about them, never really offer up much information. This is the exact same thing that happened to Black Myth Wukong. Reviewers were calling it sexist because there weren't any women in the game, only for the second half of the game to introduce several major female characters, including bosses, goddesses, and other key story figures, but that never made it into the conversation because most critics had already decided what the game was and had probably stopped playing it before it could ever prove them wrong. And now it's happening again with Stellar Blade. It's the same sleight of hand. These guys do not want subtlety in games. They need everything spelled out loud. Molly Tyler writes, does the world or its characters acknowledge Eve's sexualization or her lack in personality? No, except yes. Yes, it does. Eve isn't human. She's an android engineered by an AI to be the perfect being, an artificial answer to flawed humanity. The characters are named Adam and fucking Eve. This isn't even subtle, it's biblical. They are not meant to look normal because they are idealized by design. This only goes over your head when you are actively looking for something to hate. And that's the trick, and I want people to understand this. This kind of negative framing is not accidental. It is a tool. Outlets will praise the visuals or mechanics, but the start of the review is criticizing Eve's design, priming the readers to see the game as juvenile or shallow. Once that lens is set, everything else, combat, writing, even level design, gets dragged down with it. I have seen plenty of reviews calling out the level design for being atrocious, but after playing the game myself, no, it's not Dark Souls, but it's perfectly fine. It's perfectly serviceable. The real weak points are the uneven voice acting and the clunky writing, but that's honestly about it. Now, this is something that I didn't notice until much later, but both Stellar Blade and Black Myth Wukong are such strong enough games with clear enough appeal that the critics could not outright pan them. They could not just score them terribly. So instead, what they did was they attacked around the edges. All of the review scores landed around 80 on Metacritic, but the tone never matched the score. Instead, you got condescension, moral posturing, and when challenged, we would get the exact same excuse. What are you talking about? We reviewed it positively. I have read that so many times in so many articles on these games. They use that number as a shield while the text quietly tells you that this game is something to be ashamed of or something that you shouldn't play. Now, some of this is conscious, some of it isn't, but either way, the pattern is the exact same. We're in a global culture war right now, and games like Stellar Blade and Black Myth Wukong have become symbols of everything that games journalists do not want to win. These titles are proudly made for a male demographic, and that alone invites ridicule, because the idea that men might enjoy something and that it might succeed without appealing to everyone, that is seen as a threat. And the hypocrisy here is so obvious. These critics will gush over a dating sim where you can romance inanimate objects. They'll celebrate progressive themes. They'll cheer on Baldur's Gate 3's bear scene, but a slick action game with a hot lead, that's the line that you're going to draw? The truth is, I don't think that these guys realize how much worse they are making things for themselves. Gamers have always pushed back against this kind of pearl clutching. This has always been a counterculture space, messy, rebellious, unfiltered, and over time, they have watched it get sanitized in the name of inclusivity or in safety, not real safety or inclusivity, just the kind that looks good on a press release. Now, the irony is the people that these folks probably think that they're protecting don't even need it. They've always had games that were made for them. The issue is when every single game needs to be reshaped to fit one narrow ideological mold. When anything doesn't fit, it's just going to get quietly shamed out of existence. I mean, Stellar Blade is a mature rated game, obviously designed for men. That is okay, though, to be honest with you guys, I have seen way more women adding me on Twitter ever since I started talking about the game on there. Most of its community is ran by women. But not every franchise needs to be for everyone. Not every game needs to be focus tested into slop. Some games need to be specific. Some things are allowed to be made for somebody else. Now, sure, part of this is about money, at least on the developer side. Broader appeal does mean bigger numbers, but for the media, most of these critics and the people on the sidelines, it's not about sales, it's about control. It's about reshaping the medium to match how they think and what they think other people should value, how they think that other people should behave. It's less about what the game does and more about who it does it for. Because at the end of the day, Stellar Blade didn't really commit any sort of moral offense. It just refused to apologize who it was made for. Now, instead of live and let live, what ends up happening is they want to force their way through every single franchise and every single game that's out there. And I've said this a million times. My haters will completely disagree. They'll likely make a video saying that I'm a liar about it. But much of this comes down to target audiences. It's not like inclusive themes or diverse themes can't exist in games. It's just they can't exist in every single game because not every single game is made for everyone. A lot of this just comes down to target audiences. But that's not enough for them. So what ends up happening is that they see something that conflicts with their worldview, and while they can't outright condemn it because it's too good to condemn, they use subtlety. They use subtext to be able to do so. So they gently nudge you in the direction of not wanting to play the game, and they gently nudge the developer in the direction of not making games like that. I had a girlfriend once, crazy, I know, but she had a guy friend, completely platonic. Believe me, this dude didn't have a shot, but after they would hang out, every time I would see her, she would be on me about something. Always. And one time, she came by and she had said something like, "You never let me do what I want to do." Scouts on her, I'd never stopped this girl from doing a single thing because her doing something else meant that I was playing video games. And that was definitely not something I was going to be trying to stop. But when that happened, it clicked. And I realized it was him. She was gossiping, she was friend zoning, and he was very subtly nudging her in the direction of being more angry, about thinking that there's other things that are going on, making her believe that there's something else that was going on. And I brought it up. I said, this isn't real. This is what's happening. And she was pissed at me for saying that. And I told her that if we broke up, he would confess to her. She got even more angry. She broke up with me. 2 days later, he shows up at her door with flowers and a confession. I got an apology. The same thing is happening with these reviews because it's the negative framing, And it's also the conscious and subconscious part that's happening. The conscious part is, I don't like the guy because she's with that guy, right? So like, I don't like this game because these players like this game. And the other part of it is that they don't really know anything about them or the relationship. So that's more of the subconscious part of it. And I guarantee that some of these writers do truly believe, well, I reviewed the game positively. No, you didn't. You saw that Asmongold liked the game. You saw that some anti-woke folks over on Twitter were raving about it. And subconsciously, you did not want that game to be good. You did not want them to get a win. You wanted it to be bad or mediocre. And because of that, you were predisposed to not like that game. And that came through in your reviews. That happens. And we've seen that happen quite a lot. Now, one thing that I will say, and this is something that I think we all can agree on, is that Eve is hot as hell, like distractingly so, to the point where I don't even really know what I'm supposed to be focused on. But that pivots to a touchy topic, which is what this game's success proves. And that's that really attractive characters and solid game design make one hell of a combination. I went into Stellar Blade with incredibly low expectations, not just because of what I read, but also because I had already been burned. Because right before playing it, I tried the First Descendant, a painfully shallow experience that left me convinced that these stylized, hyper-attractive female character designs were just a cheap marketing trick. It felt like the developers thought that all they needed was hot girls on the screen and the rest would be taken care of by itself. No soul, no design vision, just pretty faces wrapped up in a lifeless game. So I assumed that Stellar Blade would be the exact same thing, and I was wrong, completely wrong, because I've played Stellar Blade for quite a while now, and part of the reason why I'm making this video right now is because I think this game was radically mischaracterized. Critics tried to paint it as a budget Nier Automata, a Temu clone with jiggle physics, but what I actually saw was something completely different, a sincere, imperfect love letter to Yoko Taro's masterpiece. And I do not invoke the name of that game lightly. Nier Automata is one of the most emotionally and structurally complete games that I have ever played. Its storytelling, its music, its pacing, the way that everything ties together. Very few games even come close to what Nier has accomplished. And to be clear, Stellar Blade does not reach those heights, but it tries. And that's what I find so fascinating. Most games would never even attempt that kind of ambition, but Shift Up somehow did on their very first AAA game. And honestly, a lot of what's going on here actually works. The world design is gorgeous. It's drenched in this quiet sense of despair. You explore cities that are slowly being reclaimed by nature, walking past towers and scattered remnants of what clearly used to be a thriving civilization. The notes you find, the little scraps of history, the fragments of loss, it all builds to something eerily beautiful. The traversal can be a little bit janky at times, but the environments feel distinct and fully realized. It's all rendered with a level of visual polish that most veteran studios cannot achieve. Some of the reviewers were trying to criticize the game's soundtrack for trying to copy off of Nier, but this soundtrack goes hard and it is all on its own. One minute you have these dreamy ambient tracks, the next it's this melodic K-pop, and then suddenly you're in a boss fight with metalcore blast beats that are pushing you into hyper-focused mode where you're just going off on a boss. And then there's the combat. My God, the combat. One-on-one, it's some of the most satisfying gameplay that I've had all year. It can be a little bit awkward in group fights since there's not really a lot of like enemy clustering mechanics. I wish that when you would swing or do AoEs, it would group enemies and then you'd be able to use your AoE attacks the way you would actually want to. But in single target encounters, it just all clicks together. The moveset just keeps expanding as you continue to play. You start with basic attacks, then you get dash counters, parry chains, repulsion dodges, and all kinds of these different skill-specific combo finishers. You've got beta attacks for breaking shields, launching enemies, or dishing out AoE damage. You can weave between these heavy and light string attacks to create all these different combos depending on your timing. And yeah, it even has its own full-blown devil trigger mode where Eve basically goes God mode for a few seconds and just shreds everything on the screen. From where I'm standing, Stellar Blade isn't just one thing. It just feels like somebody that really liked video games blending all of their favorite games together. It pulls in the challenge and structure from Dark Souls and Elden Ring, the fast-paced combat and style of Devil May Cry or Bayonetta, and the atmosphere, the music, and emotional core of a game that he clearly worshipped, which was Nier Automata. Shift Up doesn't nail everything, well, except for Eve's curves. They definitely got that part right. But what they do land is ambition. It actually reminds me of the time where I used to play in a metalcore band, and we opened once for this regional act that was called Ice 9 Kills. And I remember thinking to myself, damn, these guys are legit. I can't wait to see what they do next. And then a few years later, they ended up breaking the Billboard Top 200. And that's what this feels like to me, because the fact that this is Shift Up's first AAA game is just wild to me. It runs beautifully on PC, it looks incredible, plays smooth, and it isn't filled with microtransactions or recycled mechanics. And it's not just technically solid, this game has identity. They made the game that they wanted to make for the audience that they wanted to reach. No compromise, no diluted vision, just style, skill, and a clarity of purpose. That's why it all worked. That's why this game has been so successful, and that's why they deserve every bit of their success. But that success is also why backlash exists, because when I look at how Stellar Blade has been received and how often games that target male audiences get framed in negativity, it's not hard to see what's happening. Over the years, games have been quietly sorted into categories. You've got male games, which are shooters, military sims, and sports titles, and then everything else is supposed to be made for everyone. And the kind of stuff that sits in the middle, the kind of stuff that used to sit in the middle, the action games with the striking stylized characters and unapologetically masculine energy, most of that stuff has either been toned down or phased out entirely. We've seen this slow erosion of attractive characters under the guise of modern sensibilities. Even Japanese developers have started to shift their designs to avoid criticism. Remember Palworld CEO saying they added a character creator because Westerners like making ugly characters. That wasn't a joke, it was a business move. These guys have been talking about this. We've seen other studios admit that they have removed or redesigned female characters out of the fear that they're going to be labeled as sexist or exclusionary. And look, I'm not trying to wade into any culture war here. I am not trying to argue about morality or politics, but the simple truth is products succeed when they accurately serve their audience. That's it. You cannot make a gritty sci-fi action game with Souls-like difficulty and Devil May Cry combat for a general audience. You are by definition targeting a niche, and that niche is overwhelmingly male. The only real difference that I'm seeing between Eastern and Western studios right now is that Eastern studios are not afraid to own that. They are not embarrassed to make games for dudes. And when that kind of game has been missing from the market, when their only other options are gacha games or mobile cash grabs, it's no surprise that something like Stellar Blade lands as hard as it does. Of course it found an audience. Of course that audience loves it, because the game knew exactly who it was for and it didn't flinch. The one thing that I think people really need to understand is that all games have a right to exist, but they all don't have a right to success. Games only succeed when they're being made for a real audience, an audience that actually exists, an audience that's actually going to be interested in that game. Take Forspoken as an example. For all of its flaws, it was still a decent action game. It had a cool premise, a gorgeous world, incredible traversal, and fun combat, but the problem was the audience of players of that kind of game is overwhelmingly male, and when you build your story around a lead character who's bitter, cynical, and nearly impossible to root for, when the tone and the writing feels like it's being made for a demographic that barely even plays video games, you're not being bold, you're being delusional. You can make a game like that, but you have to be honest about the scope, the budget, and the actual reach that it can have. And there is nothing, and I mean nothing, wrong with making a game for dudes. I love emotionally complex games, a diverse cast of characters, powerful writing, but deep down, I'm genetically wired, no, compelled to play the game with the hot girl, with the nasty ass monsters, with the big sword and the giant explosions. I like things that look fun and look fun to hit, and so do a lot of people. What we're seeing right now with a lot of these recent Eastern releases is the pendulum swinging back. It's a return to cultural authenticity. When Yoko Taro comes forward and says that he made 2B sexy because I really just like girls, people respect that. When Stellar Blade's director says that I challenge modders to see what they can do, or that adult mods shouldn't be banned for any reason whatsoever, people listen, not because it's provocative, but because it's honest. No deflection, no PR shield, no pearl clutching, just saying what everybody already knows. Guys like hot girls like hot girls. We like things that look good, and there's no shame in that. I think that it's really easy to assume that games like Stellar Blade, Nier, Bayonetta, and more are just tapping into baser instincts. Like that alone is the formula. But what people are actually responding to here is the clarity. It's the creative confidence, the refusal to water things down or pretend like you're aiming for something that you're not. That honesty resonates, not because it's bold, but because it feels rare in a space that has become so obsessed with risk management and mass appeal. But even with that authenticity, intention only gets you so far, because the truth is, it's not enough. And Stellar Blade proves that, and that's what makes this game even more important. Hot characters alone do not make a game work. Just look at The First Descendant, a game that had the looks, but none of the substance. It's lost over 98% of its player base because they never prioritized gameplay. The devs thought that they could just coast with surface level appeal, but all they delivered was a shallow, aggressively monetized mess. And their last biggest update that they did, well, they added jiggle physics. And I'm sure the dozen players that are left playing the game appreciated it, but it doesn't fix a hollow game. Gameplay and quality always come first. And that's what I find really frustrating when I see a game like Stellar Blade framed the way that it was. So many outlets and critics, even players that were fixated on how characters were portrayed in the game, suffocating the conversation that we should have had. This was Shift Up's first shot at a AAA title, and they crushed it. No, it's not perfect. No, it wasn't made for everyone, but it was a damn good game. It knew exactly who it was made for, and it delivered. That is worth celebrating. That is worth respecting. And frankly, it's a lesson that a lot of studios could learn from. I think the desire to see games like Stellar Blade fail comes from the fallacy that games are a 50-50 split, regardless of genre, between male and female. And it's really just not the case. And they think that if games like this succeed, well, then these companies are going to be more inclined to make games like those. And then it also goes to prove that the vast majority of things that people say online don't actually even matter. And when they are offline, they're just going to go buy the things that they want regardless. And if there's more money in games like that, well, then there's less money in games like Dragon Age the Veilguard. And that doesn't necessarily sit right with a lot of people's worldview. I can't imagine how hostile of an environment it has to be a game developer that's trying to make a game or trying to make games that are going to please everybody and not offend anybody. Actually, I take that back. I know exactly how that is. I'll be honest. When I first started making YouTube videos a couple years ago now, I guess it's actually 2 years now, I tried to play both sides. If it was a game that I hated, I would try to talk about the good side. If it was a game that I liked, I try to talk about the, bad side. If it's a culture issue or something like that, I would try to do my best to just stay between it. But the funny thing is, that never works. And that's just not what people want, because it's not you and it's not real. So eventually I just got to the point where I said, screw it. I'm not taking any sides. I'm just going to say what my opinion is. Take it or leave it. If you don't like it, it is what it is. Come to find out, lo and behold, people like that content a heck of a lot more. Funny enough, all the labels that people used to throw on me when I was making those super nice videos, yeah, they're all still here. They're still the same. Doesn't matter what you do. People are going to do that regardless. It's like I said before, in the eyes of the players, when they see a game like Stellar Blade, it's counterculture. It is so refreshingly blunt. This is an old term, and you don't really hear this very often anymore, but it's a pushback against political correctness. You can't do that. You can't say that. You can't make that. And finally, somebody standing up to say, yeah, but I like it. I don't think that these guys realize that they've essentially just become like politicians are with like GTA, where they just assume that, because they play these games, they're going to commit crimes. Now they're saying, well, if they play games like this, they're going to objectify women. I think it's time to stop assuming people's intentions or actions based off of the media that they consume, regardless of whatever they create, play, or if they're just enjoying a video game. Stop worrying about it. Maybe we just need to flip it back on these guys. Tell them that the game wasn't made for them. Lord knows it was definitely made for me. Anyway, thank you guys for watching today's video. If you guys enjoyed today's video, like the video, share the video, comment down below. Watch it a second time. Watch it a third time. Follow me on Twitch. I'm going to MagicCon this weekend. So if any of you guys are there, come by and say hi. Outside of that, my friends, stay cool, stay righteous, stay safe, and I'll catch you in the next one.